Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to You Tell Me. My name is Tom Murphy Jr., and today I have Dan Murphy of Michigan Sports and Entertainment with me, and we're talking Lions. Ladies and gentlemen, it's draft day. In fact, it's pretty much the witching hour
The
here.
countdown, yeah.
The countdown is on. The NFL draft, one of the most exciting times uh, of the year, maybe. People really, really get excited for the draft, and I'm one of those people. Dan, how are you doing today, and how excited are you with the NFL draft coming up in just about an hour here?
I'm good. It's been a very busy day. It's down at Comerica for the Tiger game today. It was down at the Comerica last night for the Tiger game too. So it's a lot of baseball last 24 hours. So I'm excited to talk some football. And the draft's always a fun time. We talked about in some of our podcasts. A lot of times it's been the Detroit Lions Super Bowl, the NFL draft, and not so much the last few years as the Lions have put themselves into a position where they can be a Super Bowl contender, despite what happened last season, finishing in last place, but still finishing with a winning record. And I think we all feel like they're ready for a bounce back and ready to get back into Super Bowl contention. So, not so much a Super Bowl for the Lions, but definitely an extremely important draft for them moving forward.
So yeah, the Lions Super Bowl with was the draft for many years, and things are a little different now. With the recent success, being a half away from the Super Bowl, and then kind of like a little bit of a not even a little bit, a pretty major decline from there. The past two seasons. How important do you think this draft is? For the regime, for Brad Holmes, and for Dan Campbell to really hit a couple home runs here, because there's talent obviously in this draft, but a lot of people are saying that it's not one of the better drafts in recent years. Um, and then with the Lions picking at 17, you're kind of in that middle of the road spot. How important is this draft for this regime this year?
Well, I think after the last couple of years, them not maybe getting as many players out of those drafts and high end players out of those drafts as they have in the past. You look back at 2022 in that incredible draft with Gibbs and Campbell and Branch and Laporta, an all time great draft. But since then, it hasn't been quite as successful, and you're kind of seeing the effects of that over the last couple of years, where injuries have really taken a toll on this team and derailed. Because we talked about Super Bowl aspirations specifically last year, where injuries would put them in last place. They did have a winning season, finished in 9-8, but you can't deny it. They finished in last place in the NFC North after winning it 2 years in a row, and injuries had a lot to do with that, and depth had a lot to do with that. And where do you get depth from? You get it from the draft, right? Sometimes you get some free agents, some gems in free agency, some guys that maybe people had slept on, but really you build your depth through the draft and through later rounds. And it hasn't been as successful for Brad Holmes as of late. Now, some of those guys, you got to look, maybe 3-4 years down the road and grade those guys, especially, a year or two down the road. You can't necessarily put final grades on those players. They still have time to develop, and things can happen. But in the here and now, they have not gotten enough from the last couple drafts that they need to get them over the hump.
How do you think their free agency, their off season and the moves they made? Some people, were underwhelmed. Some people think that a lot of holes were filled. Um, how do you see the draft and the free agency like correlating with each other here right now?
I think they were able to fill some of the holes on this roster, but there's still quite a few. Unfortunately, guys came in like Cade Mays, who's going to fill that center position. It's not Frank Ragnow. Very few people are. Very few players are. One of the all-time great centers, but he's a very capable starting center in this league, and it's going to be really improve that offensive line from last year. But you lose Decker, right? And that's, you're going to have to replace the tackle position. They went out and got Larry Borum, which I feel is kind of a fringe starter. They gave him $5 million, which is kind of like he could be a starter, but you'd prefer him to be, kind of your third tackle and more of backup depth if you can make it happen. But he can start if they have to, but you'd really rather not. You look at Alex Anzalone leaving in free agency, that leaves the opening at outside linebacker, which definitely needs to be filled. They always need to fill the edge rusher position opposite of Hutch. We all know that. That's become an old bit in this town, right? A classic old bit, but play the siren, right? And then you look at safety position. I talked about this a lot. Safety position is a really weird one, right? Because if you walk into a season right now, you're screwed. You don't have safeties. Now, if you're willing to wait until later in the season, you're going to get Branch later on, but you don't know what you're getting back from him, coming back from a torn Achilles, when his whole game is based on explosiveness, right? And you coming off a torn Achilles, man, that's one of the toughest sports injuries to come back from, especially when explosiveness and athleticism is your prime aspect. That's going to be tough. That's going to be a lot to ask for Branch to come back and be a savior later in the season. And then Kirby is such a question mark in general, both in the immediate and in the long term. I've heard things said that this is something he's going to have to deal with for the rest of his career. Well, what the hell does that mean? Like, does it mean he's going to be 95%, 90%, 8%, 70%, or he's just never going to be a starting caliber safety anymore? So they're in a real tough position with safety, because let's say they use the 17th pick, Tom, on a safety, and then you find out later in the 2026 season that, Branch and Kirby are good. They're back to being the all-pro stuff. Well, now what are you doing with that safety they used the 17th pick on? Right. So it's a really weird spot that they're in with safety. And I kind of thought, like, there's no way they're drafting safety, right? That's out of the question. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, man, like if things fall a certain way, maybe they will consider drafting a safety, because they're in a tough spot going into 2026 at the safety position. So, I mean, all that to say, man, they're still, they filled some holes in the free agency, but there is still a lot of spots on this team and on this roster that need to be taken care of, and hopefully at least some of them can be taken care of in the draft here.
Yeah, that safety position is a conundrum, if you will, because you're exactly right. I mean, it's just, you're stuck there, and if you do draft a safety in the first round, like, I mean, for one, he better be a stud, but you're right. Like, I mean, injuries are going to happen, and so, I mean, I guess it would be a blessing in disguise if the two safeties come back, healthy, and then we still have, a top pick as a backup. But you don't want a first round.
Yeah, well, I brought this up on our we did a mock draft the other night with Dustin Whitehead and Lawrence Mardugas, and Dustin I brought up the safety point, and he brought up the fact that you could have Branch play more as a nickel corner and come down and play in the box a little bit more, and then you could have kind of a 3 safety look where Branch is playing more of that nickel corner position, more in the slot, which I thought was a good point that he brought up. But ideally, that's not necessarily where you want Branch to be. You want him to be your kind of stud, strong safety, and Kirby a free safety, and then use a true cover corner as your slot nickel corner. Now, if they got into a position now that they could do that, you could have that luxury to do that. But I mean, I prefer to fill that spot. I'm not using the 17th pick for a nickel corner, which is basically in that scenario that you're doing, right? When you have tackle, that is such a need. You have outside linebacker, that's such a need, and edge, which is always a need on this team.
So take safety out. This first round, if they stay at 17, where are you seeing like the prime position of need right now, like based on like talent of certain guys, and versus, like, are you seeing more edge rushers that are looking good around 17? Are you seeing more tackles that are looking good around 17, or is there certain linebackers? What position do you think of need is most like abundant at that 17 slot?
Well, I think the number one position they need is tackle, without question. The question is who do they like? Is there anybody on their list that maybe they're crossing off the list? And a guy that I'm going to bring up is Caden Proctor.
Yeah, he's been really controversial.
Yeah, he's somebody I'm really interested in because he definitely has the talent, right? We know how good he is as a tackle and how dominant he can be at the college level. But there's concern about his weight, concern about his discipline, which is when those things come up, those are always red flags to the Lions, and the Lions usually cross those guys off the list immediately. Like they're not even considered. Like if they drop to them, they're not going to take them because they're not on their list, right?
Yeah.
Now I don't know if Proctor is a part of that. I'm not sure if they met with him or not. I would assume that they did. I'm not sure if he was a part of that 30-man list of players that they meet with or not. But I just, just from the outside looking in, I don't think Proctor's on their list of guys they're going to be looking at. But other teams are, because of how strong and dominant he can be at the tackle position. The guy that everybody's talking about and the guy that we really want is Merle Freeling from Georgia. I think he's a guy that could potentially drop to them. And if he does, I think that will be the pick. You see a lot of mock drafts, including our mock draft, had Freeling going to the Lions. I think that's where a lot of people think he's going to end up, and it makes the most sense.
There's an interesting side note about that the Lions, now he's the one, the Lions didn't even bring him in for a workout, I believe. Is that, you think that's Holmes, like, playing coy, like being deceptive when that news gets out there like that, or like, because you wonder.
I mean, a lot of those things.
You would think that he'd be a top, a top issue, a top player to bring in and work out.
Yeah, I mean, some of those things, maybe they've met with him already. Maybe it's Brad Holmes at times has gone out and scouted himself. Things like that, where they really trust their scouts, where they've been out and seen them and they trust the tape. I don't know, man. A lot of those things can be smoke screens. Like there was a lot of talk earlier, I think it was a week or two ago, that the Lions loved Caden Proctor, and I'm like, I don't know, man. Like I don't think so. Like I really don't think so. And you're hearing some reports from some local beat writers said absolutely not. Like they Proctor's not on their list. Going back to what I said about him. So you never know. The Lions are just one of 32 teams that are going to do that, right? They're going to put smoke screens out there. They're going to put fake reports out there to get people off their trail to not, see where they're kind of leaning. They're all teams are going to do that. So, I mean, that could be a part of that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, speaking of with Brad Holmes, he does have quite the, like the reputation of, trading. Like he loves wheeling and dealing on draft day. On draft weekend, and what do you think tonight? Do you? I guess what kind of like Bo? Like what do you think and what do you want? Like for me, I mean, I think he's going to wheel and deal for sure. I would be shocked if he doesn't. Maybe not specifically tonight in the first round, but definitely going back, in the later rounds, but. I would like to see some fireworks just because it's entertaining.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I would like to see him trade back. I'm always a trade back guy, get more draft capital. But once again, if you want to believe like the reports and whatnot that this is not a very deep draft, maybe that's not the move this year. Maybe the move is to spend some draft capital and move up. What are your thoughts on that? What do you want to see, and what do you think he's going to do, specifically in this first round?
Yeah, I think if he's starting to see or kind of feel that there might be a run on tackles, I could see them trying to move up. I find it hard to believe that they're not going to try really hard to get a tackle that they feel good about out of this first round. And considering the situation that they're in, I just find that hard to believe. And if it means moving up a couple picks, it means moving up a couple picks. Now, can they move up into the top 10? I don't think they have the ammunition to do that. And they're definitely not going to trade a first round pick next year to get a tackle and essentially trade two.
Yeah, I'd be shocked.
Two first rounds. Yeah. That'd be essentially using 2 first round picks on a tackle. I don't see that. But I could see them moving up from maybe like 17 to like 13, 14, kind of in that range. To kind of secure themselves to get the tackle they want, which I think is Freeling, but it could be somebody else. But I definitely think they're going to try hard to get that tackle. Now, on the other end, say they're not able to move up. They don't have the ammunition to do it. There's a run on tackles. They're sitting at 17. The tackle they that are available are not first round caliber on their list, maybe that's a situation where they do trade down and move back in the draft and try to add some draft capital, maybe move back up later on, or move around, in the second or third round, because they don't have a third round pick, but they have 2 fourths and 2 fifths. So you mentioned like, hey, where are they going to make the trades? That they're definitely going to make some trades in the second, third, fourth round. That area for sure. There's definitely going to be some movement in that range, because I don't see them sitting with 2 fourths and 2 fifths and not having a third. Like there's definitely going to be some movement in there. But as far as the first round goes, yeah, that's where I see it. I could see them moving up a couple picks. I cannot see them moving up into the top 10. They just don't have enough to do that.
So what do you think it would take as far, like, I don't want to trade the second round pick either, like I think trading up, if you get your guy, and you do what it takes. But you trade your 17 spot, and like, what in your mind would you think it would take to move up from 17 to 11
to move a couple spots?
You're talking
maybe they send like a second next year, or maybe package some of their 4th and 5th round picks and a 3rd round next year, something along those lines, or because like I said, they do have 2 fourths and 2 fifths. Yeah. So it does give them, they're not completely out on draft capital. They just don't have a 3rd round. So I would hate to move the second round, because you never know how much it's going to cost, because the team that's moving back might be like, man, I really want to move down. Like, screw it. Like they don't love their draft board. Hey, let's move down a couple spots. Or maybe they had 1 or 2 guys that they were really keyed on. Those guys are gone. Hey, let's just move back a couple spots, and we can add some draft capital. You never know, because sometimes it changes draft to draft and team to team in terms of how much it can cost just to move up a couple spots. You've seen some trades where teams just moved up a couple spots and feel like they gave up a boatload. And then there's other ones where they feels like they didn't really give it much, where it's like, kind of a second round swap, where they just moved a few spots. So you're not going to know until the kind of draft gets going and what the cost is going to be. But I just come back to it. Like I just find it really hard to believe that they're not going to come out of this first round without a tackle. Like they have to get one, man. In my opinion, they got to get a tackle out of this first round.
Yeah, it remains to be seen for sure, but I would definitely be happy with the tackle or edge. I'm on that train with the edge. Of course, I think it's like the never-ending battle between the Lions front office and the fans. It's like, give us that edge. Obviously you got Aiden, and you give him that if you gave him that bookend edge, that could be huge. But I wonder which one would have more impact, the edge or the offensive tackle. And I think you're right. I think we need it, but it feels like we've been building up the offense at a very higher level than building up the defense. And then with all these holes around and these injuries, and then we saw what happened last year. It was on both sides of the ball, though. Like, obviously the injuries across the board were hurting, but you could see where the defense was just really – there were too many holes. And then we know where the holes are. Like, it's the offensive line. The skill positions, we're set, and we're going to be set, for a while, it seems. But you saw what happened with Jared Goff when that line wasn't elite. And, it's so exciting. And I know it's coming up here pretty quickly. And I'm so interested about how they are going to handle this situation.
I think it's going to be quite boring, and they're going to sit at 17, and Freeling's going to fall to them, and they're going to draft a tackle on offensive lineman. I think it's going to be pretty boring, but you never know. That's the fun of the draft, right? You really have no idea what could happen. They could trade up and do something crazy that they're going to say, hey, screw it. We're going to go all in, and we're going to go get a top edge rusher out of nowhere. Like Dustin brought up at the comments there. Like, if you're going to trade up, go and get the edge rusher. My point is, like, if you're going to trade up and trade a bunch of draft capital, well, why the hell didn't you get Crosby then? Like, why aren't you going out and getting Crosby or somebody along those lines? Or why didn't you, spend big money and try to get Trey Hendrickson in here? Like that, if you're going to go all in, and with you might as well not give up all this draft capital and just get a rookie. You might as well have gotten a proven veteran that is going to come in and dominate right away. So I just think the opportunity with the draft is, where they're sitting. I think they can get a starting caliber tackle, which they absolutely need. So I just see it just feels too easy. Like kind of how many tackles are available in like the top 20. It's the exact position they need. Where they're drafting at 17, it just makes too much sense. Yeah, but we've seen crazier things happen. We've seen crazier things happen. So
yeah, maybe we draft a tight end.
We draft a receiver. Hey, why not?
Yeah. Oh my God! Could you imagine how many TVs would get broken in Metro Detroit? Oh my Lord! Yeah. Speaking of Dustin, yeah, he said, yeah, screw it. If you're gonna trade up, get an edge. Again, like, yeah, you hit that on the head, man. Like there was that already should have. If that is the plan, that should have already been done. But
just to wrap up something on the edge talk, Tom. Like, I don't know how much they want like a true rush edge, like another one, like on the opposite side of Hutchinson. I know to us it seems ridiculous. Like, yeah, have two dominant pass rushers, right? You give the quarterback no time, especially when you got injuries in your secondary and your corners are questionable. Like, you can help your secondary by having some dominant edge rushers. We've seen what the Houston Texans were able to do. They almost made a deep playoff run with no quarterback. Shout out to the Buckeyes, right? But like they believe in having, we have one dominant edge rusher and edge Hutchinson, but on the other side, we want to have a run defender. Like we want to have a run defending defensive end. Now, a possible run defender in this draft at 17 could be Keldrick Faulk out of Auburn, who is kind of viewed as a little bit more of a run defender as opposed to true pass rusher. So again, if the tackles are gone, there's a run of tackles they aren't able to trade up, and there's a tackle there that they like. That's a possibility. Keldrick Faulk out of Auburn, I could see as a possibility as the opposite edge rusher. I wouldn't even call him an edge rusher, just opposite defensive end of Hutch.
Yeah. Well, all right, Dan. I know this is awesome, man. I know this is kind of a quick hit here, but I know you're getting ready for your live draft coverage. You want to talk about that real quick before we sign off here?
Yeah, we're going to be jumping on at 8 p.m. right when the draft starts, and we're going to be covering the entire draft. Just like we did the other night, we did an entire mock draft and when each pick of the first round. It was kind of a dry run for us for what we're doing tonight. We're going to cover the entire draft as it happens, give our opinions. I got some different graphics for each team as they come up, and we're going to talk about each team. And Dustin brought it up the other night that the draft is actually each pick, is instead of a 10-minute clock, it's an 8-minute clock. So it's going to be a little shorter. Each pick's going to be a little shorter. So hopefully it's a little bit, I don't want to say rapid fire, but it should be a little bit quicker than what has been in the past. I think it used to be like back in the day. They used to be like 15 minutes.
Yeah, I thought it took
like all day for the first round.
Yeah, 15 minutes, and it would just seem to go forever.
Oh my God, everybody would take the whole 15 minutes. Yeah. Oh my God, it was horrible.
I was talking to a friend of mine today about the draft and kind of how that was, and it's all about the NFL and the money, man. Like a lot of these teams probably have their picks already, but the NFL's like, no, let's go. You go ahead and take your time so we can get these commercials on the air. It's all a conspiracy over money. But it's gonna be fun, man. I hope you guys have a great time. Doing the live coverage. That should be fun. It should be a very interesting night, man. The first round, it usually is. So let's hope the Lions get a gem out of here, night one, and
get a starter at least. Get a starter.
At the very
day one.
Yeah. Oh man. But all right, Dan, thanks for joining me, my friend. This has been another episode of You Tell Me.